What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, and today I've got another A.M.A. Ask Me Anything episode for y'all. But before we dive into that, let's roll the intro. And we're back. All right, so today's question is brought to us from Brian, and he says, I often hear that it's a bad idea to rely on willpower when it comes to staying on track with nutrition. I've lost 50 pounds slowly but surely over the last 5 years. Congrats, Brian. And using a ketogenic diet, 240 to 190 at 5'11", yet it still takes a ton of willpower to not fall back into my old eating habits. Everyone says that once you make keto a lifestyle, it becomes easier to stick to. I found the opposite to be true, and I find it easier to justify eating carbs now that I'm at a healthier weight. Any thoughts or tips on the subject would be much appreciated. All right, so this is kind of a tricky one because this is so rooted in like our psychology and our emotional relationship with food. So for me, the longer I do something, the easier it becomes to continue doing that thing. So like, I don't really know where I stand on viewing carbohydrates as an addictive substance. I've heard both sides, and it makes sense from both sides. I think it's probably very individualized in that regard. A lot of people can't moderate carbohydrate intake, so they go keto, they go carnivore, they eliminate it entirely, and they get all the health benefits from it, and then it becomes easier for them the longer they go without to, avoid the temptation of indulging in those carbs again. For me, I feel like I honestly could introduce carbs back into my life and have the discipline and willpower to not go down a dark, rabbit hole of just overconsumption of carbohydrates. However, that's oftentimes not the case for people. If you ever feel like you're sacrificing a ton, it's always going to be in the back of your mind gnawing at you to like go for it and just test it out and try it and see if you can consume it and not go off the rails and onto a bender. But I don't really think that's a healthy relationship. Like, you don't want to feel like you're sacrificing. If you feel like you're sacrificing, your mental fortitude and just willpower is always going to be pushed and taxed. And then willpower is like this finite resource. Like, we have a tank of willpower at the beginning of the day. And then every time we have to exercise discipline, that willpower tank gets reduced bit by bit by bit. So if you're constantly having to leverage your willpower to avoid consuming, processed foods, sugars, carbohydrate foods, then it's just always going to be taxing on you. It's always going to be just this exhaustive thing that weighs heavily on you. So you shouldn't ever feel like you're having to sacrifice. If you feel like you're sacrificing, it's going to be depleting your willpower tank. For me and for many others, swapping out the foods that they like with a ketogenic alternative usually helps that process quite a bit. So for instance, I love cheesecake. I've always loved cheesecake. If I could never taste the sensation of cheesecake again, I'd be okay, but at the end of the day, I'd be like, damn, I just wish I was able to eat some cheesecake every once in a while. Once I swapped over and I started making cheesecakes with a totally ketogenic, macro profile and ingredient list, I was able to scratch that itch and it not feel like I was sacrificing. Now, I don't recommend eating keto cheesecakes every single day, obviously, but I don't ever feel like I'm sacrificing cheesecakes entirely because there's ketogenic alternatives to those comfort foods that you can have for special occasions. I think finding the foods that you're drawn to and then finding a way to keto-fy them, that way you never have to deviate from your nutritional lifestyle, but you don't feel guilty when you do consume them is super, super important. Like, you shouldn't ever feel guilt around the foods that you're consuming. So for me, again, I don't eat cheesecakes every single day, but when I do eat a ketogenic cheesecake, I don't feel bad about it because it's not, totally counter to the lifestyle I've chosen for myself, the lifestyle which I know is healthier and more in line with my goals. So that would be what I would recommend, finding alternatives for you that you don't feel like you're having to sacrifice. And then honestly, just simply being more excited about all the benefits that come from not eating the carbohydrates than from fixating on all the things that you're missing. That would be my 2 cents of advice there. So thank you so very much for the question, Brian. You requested some cookies and cream crunch bricks. I've got those shipping your way as we speak. For any of you that do not know how this works, if you submit a question via the A.M.A. link below and I use your question in one of these A.M.A. videos, I send you some bricks of your flavor choosing as a token of my appreciation. Thank y'all so much, and I'll see you next time.